Welcome back. This is Step 5, Part 2. In Part 1, we talked about motivation and marketing as pre-instructional activities designed to encourage enrollment in your instructional offering. In Step 5, Part 2, we'll discuss information presentation, learner participation and interaction, and assessment of learners. As you can see, Step 5 includes multiple elements. What you accomplish in Step 5 will prepare you for Step 6, choosing and/or developing tools and instructional materials. In Step 5, you will refine what you've accomplished in previous steps. For the information presentation part of Step 5, you'll go back to the work you've accomplished in Step 2, which was instructional analysis, and now you'll be able to refine that work with respect to sequencing and delivering the instruction. If you were very detailed in Step 2, you may have less work to do. If your instructional analysis was more on a top level, you'll now need to dig down and break up the content into smaller chunks with a greater level of detail. Go back to your instructional analysis and determine the sequence of instruction you'll need to follow. At this point, you may need to reconsider the order in which you present the elements of your instruction, as well as the manner in which you'll teach the necessary knowledge, skills, and attitudes. That is, how you're going to teach them. Will you use video? Will you use simulations? What activities? These are your learning objects. What is a learning object? A learning object is a term that really means little more than an instructional material or resource that is used in technology-supported learning environments. The term became popular in the 1990s with web-based instruction and often referred to reusable learning objects because with little additional work, they can be easily repurposed or reused. So we'll use the term learning objects on your instructional design template. We'll take a look at an example of what comes together in Step 5. But first, let's consider another element of Step 5, learner participation and interaction. Learner participation and interaction is the other side of information presentation. It refers to what your learners will actually be doing during the learning and teaching process, which of course includes the information presentation. You'll ask the question, how do I want my learners to be interacting with the content, including my presentation and the materials, as well as interacting with their classmates? You're going to want to create a learning environment that includes all the tools and learning objects or materials you'll need to encourage a high level of learner participation. How will they interact with your learning objects? The learning objects I'm using for this week's D4L instruction are designed to encourage learner participation and interaction. You are viewing and listening to my video. You'll complete checks for understanding through the challenge yourself questions. You'll engage in a reflection to stimulate higher order thinking. Possibly you'll read the suggested support materials and complete an assignment. These are all active learning components for this week. Encouraging active learning is what we want. Finally, Step 5 involves learning assessments. This maps back to Step 4, learning outcomes, and is something that we discussed in detail in Week 4. How will learning be assessed? You'll recall that your learning assessment must match your learning outcomes. And as a reminder, Bloom's revised taxonomy can help a lot with that. So for Step 5, you will go back to your Step 4 learning outcomes and decide, how will you know that your learners have successfully accomplished the intended learning outcomes? Will you use project-based assessments, quizzes, tests, papers, research reports, perhaps creating a game journals, and so much more. And remember, they should include both formative and summative assessments. Last week in week 4, we dedicated the entire week to learning assessment. So please refresh your memory and revisit week 4 if you need to. Another important consideration in planning instructional activities is thinking about how you will motivate your learners during instruction. This is different than motivating them to enroll in your class. That's why I've prepared a separate video for this week to discuss the kind of strategies you'll find helpful in maintaining learner motivation. At this point, an example of Step 5 in action would be helpful. You may have already taken a peek at the traditional TALES instructional design plan. It's one of our D4L examples. It was designed for second grade students. I'll use it to show one way of laying out all the elements you need for Step 5. This D4L participant has taken her instructional outline in Step 2 and broken it down into a sequence of activities in Step 5. Let me get there. Notice the sequence of instruction numbered down in the left-hand column of the spreadsheet. Some of the initial activities are on the remembering level. So I'm going to move down to one that's on the applying level, a little higher up on Bloom's taxonomy. The learning outcome is that students use examples from the text to illustrate why a story is labeled as a folktale or fable. Now, as you can see, this is the learning object column, and the learning object here is the online journal activity with an option for artistic or visual response. And the type of learning object is in this column, and it's an online document. She's also given us the learner participation interaction element, and in this case, it's reading and writing in the journal. She's talked about the motivational aspects in this column, and that's that students will also enjoy the social aspects of emailing each other. And finally, in this column is the learning assessments, 2 options here that align with the learning outcome. So if they are going to use examples from the text to illustrate why a story is labeled as a folktale or fable, and they're reading and writing in a journal, then writing portions as a free response assessment is appropriate. So that was our example using traditional TALES. In Part 3 of Step 5, I'll talk more about planning for learner motivation. Thank you.